From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. A lot of people don't realize this, but we have a vault full of recorded bank episodes for every possible circumstances in which one of us would miss an episode. If you're listening to this episode, it means that Jim is unable to record today due to his incarceration in Southeast Asia after starting his own cult in Myanmar. We wish him the best. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
To clarify, this is not a bank episode. This is real time. Next week is Valentine's Day, and it's recorded in advance.
It's bank-ish.
Yeah, it's pre-recorded. But when you're hearing this, next week is Valentine's Day, and the reason we had to get to it a few days early is because I am actually traveling in the Grand Canyon. I'm taking my little boy for his birthday, so we're gonna go check out the Grand Canyon. Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon, Nick?
I have not.
You've never been?
No.
Wow, and you're such an outdoorsy guy.
I know, and I live
Or
here
you're
in
full
Vegas.
of it. That's the deal here. I'm onto your lies. You don't even leave the house.
Yeah,
look it up on the Travel Channel.
I know. I feel terrible about that. I need to actually go to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I feel like that would be your jam. Jacob, you've been to the Grand Canyon.
I have.
Yeah.
SJ actually had a gig there for, I don't know, 6 months or so. So I would go back and forth.
Really?
And
That's
visit
awesome.
her.
You can have a gig at the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
That's really
awesome.
cool. Is she like an Evil Knievel kind of guy? Or?
Yeah, she jumped it.
Yeah, she just kept jumping it.
Yeah.
Every day for 6 months.
Back and forth.
for 6 months.
Stay on the other side of the canyon for the night. Crowd shows up 10 a.m. Quick jump. Land, get breakfast.
That's
you know
awesome.
the deal. She just glides. Well, that's really cool. So yeah, I'm gonna go see it. My son's never seen it, and I'm bringing my daughter too. So
How far are you going? Are you going like...
Into the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, because I mean, you can get to the Grand Canyon from
I have
here
a
for like...
3-year-old, so we're going to the edge of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, so it's like 4 hours
We're
away.
not like riding a donkey into the sea. Yeah. We're going like 4-hour thing, and there's like a train, and it's pretty cute. You can like ride a train over there. So we're gonna do all that. But
I hiked that trail that the donkeys use.
You did?
on the south end.
Did you really?
Which is it's a couple of miles.
Holy crap!
Like vertical.
Yeah.
Wow.
Intense.
Jeez, that's why you're supposed to ride the donkey.
Right.
Did you not see the little rental kiosk? You're supposed to...
I had a stick.
You're halfway
I don't
down
know.
and you see this donkey coming back up. You're like, damn it.
Going down is much harder.
It is.
Going down is much
because
harder.
it's so steep?
Yeah, you're constantly trying to control and not tumble and die.
Oh my god.
So how is it that people do it on a donkey? I think it'd be easier
donkeys,
to do it on
dude,
foot.
Donkeys are crazy. Those things cannot fall.
Really?
They are great.
That is the
running
single most serious face that I've ever seen on Jim's face.
Yeah, clearly you know nothing.
You talk about donkeys. Jim gets serious.
Yeah, that's when it all clicked. Dude, seriously. I'm okay.
That would be a good drop if we can get that at some point. Because donkeys are serious.
Donkeys.
Shit.
They don't have their own show for nothing.
Dude, they're amazing. Listen.
That's right. Donkey show joke
Donkey.
on Pod Therapy.
On Pod Therapy, the Donkey Show. Brought to you
Put
by...
my mic away.
It took 58 episodes, but we finally
got the Donkey Show plug. God. Anyway, donkeys are sure-footed. That's the thing you need to understand about donkeys.
You got to have a lot of trust in a donkey.
They're ridiculous, man. It's crazy. I watch like a lot of nature documentaries, and they're just like scaling rock faces. It's like this.
Well, I've seen
awkward,
the mountain goats. I've seen them, because they've got those in Ireland, and I've seen them go up.
Oh, donkeys are in that class, and it's just crazy because, like, it's like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, just like walking up a rock face, no big deal, and just like, so you're better off on that thing than trying to do it yourself.
It's amazing.
Which has got to be the most terrifying thing.
Yeah, I think
having
that's
no control.
Yeah,
and you're just holding on to that donkey, man.
Another good drop.
Jesus. Anyway, Valentine's Day will be coming up a week after people hear this. So what are your Valentine's Day plans? Have you started thinking about it?
No.
I have Valentine's Day plans. Well, the day
no
after
doubt.
Valentine's Day. When you have kids, you don't go out Valentine's Day.
Right.
And Valentine's Day is on a Thursday, which actually we're going to announce at the end of the show. But if you are listening to this episode, you have 1 week. Get in. Actually, you have less than a week because we record on Sundays. So you need to get in those love and relationship questions so that we can dedicate Valentine's Day's episode, because Valentine's Day is on a Thursday. So it's going to be Therapy Thursday on Valentine's Day. It's going to be relevant. So get us those love and relationship questions. This year, for Valentine's Day, I usually do a whole lot of nothing. My wife goes nuts. Like, she does the whole house. It's all hearts and crap and chocolates and candles for the kids. It's not for me.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I get
Say.
home and she makes them like special things. They're her little Valentines, and I'm like, great. And so, but then the next day on Friday, we're going to Ka. And I've never been to Cirque du Soleil Ka. I've never been to any Cirque du Soleil. So I'm really excited about this.
I liked Ka. I thought it was pretty good.
You've been to it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've seen
okay.
Ka. My favorite, actually, I think, was Zarkana, was the one that I saw that I really liked.
Is that the one where it's like
They don't have
sex
it anymore.
billboards all the time?
No, that's...
Zumanity?
Zumanity.
That was Zumanity? Okay. Yeah, every freaking casino hotel in Las Vegas has a Cirque show.
Yeah.
Like, like they've done it every possible way you can do it.
You'll like it.
Yeah,
You'll like Ka.
Ka's the one that has like the big balance beam, right?
It's a stage, and it's like it moves around,
Oh,
and
that's
sometimes it's
cool.
like vertical, and they run up and down.
Oh,
and
way to
all
spoil
over,
the
and-
freaking show, man. Jeez.
It's on the billboard, dude.
No, you know, I'm selling my tickets.
Okay, I'll buy them. All right.
Now I know that people
There we
run
go.
up and down the you know, damn
Yeah.
it. Take away the magic. So you don't have any Valentine's Day plans?
No.
You
Nothing.
better figure this out, dude. You got to hang on to this girl.
I've got time.
He said as he glanced at his watch. Well, you're running out. So other people out there, don't forget, this is your public service announcement. You have a week for Valentine's Day. Get that stuff into us and make your plans if you have not already. And we'll talk about it at the end of the show as well. But just a quick reminder at the top of the show, Valentine's Day is one of the highest risk days of the calendar year for suicide. And so that is a really good day to just tag people with a direct message or a text or a phone call, just to tell them, hey, you know, I love you. I'm thinking about you. You're a good friend, or, you know, good family member. Just, I want to remind you that you matter. Just a great day to send out positive vibes into the universe. So I want to make sure people are doing that.
There you go.
Speaking of positive vibes, here in the A block, one of the things we've been doing is we've been rolling out techniques, not so much studies, even though we totally still have a pile of those to get to. But we've been rolling out different techniques. Last week we did the trauma timeline, and the week before that we did the coping skills list. A lot of people have really enjoyed those. And so the next one that we want to roll out is something that goes with something you and I talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So our favorite theory that we talk about on the show,
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
yes, cognitive behavioral
CBT.
therapy, CBT. So this was come up with by a guy named Dr. Aaron Beck. I believe Dr. Beck's still alive, but he is very elderly. And,
Yeah, we are recording this like 2 weeks early.
So who knows? Oh, jeez. Oh, all the therapists that listen to the show are just sort of like, oh, yawn. Like,
Yeah, we've just lost Aaron Beck as a listener.
yeah. There goes Beck.
Yeah.
But CBT is a gold standard in psychotherapy for a lot of different approaches. It has wide applicability. We use it in addictions. We use it in depression. We use it in anxiety. We use it in relationship counseling. It has a lot of different variations. But the essence of CBT is asking ourselves if it's possible that sometimes we have a illusory perspective about reality. Imagine that you're wearing like funhouse mirror glasses and you didn't even know that you were, and the world seemed odd and distorted and out of perspective. And if that were the case, if you believed those false perspectives, how would it affect the way you live your life? Where, like, clearly you'd be bumping into things and you'd be, you know, wrongly interpreting the distance of things and wrongly interpreting yourself. And so that's what that form of therapy asks, is it says, hey, you know what? There's a list of, like, known glitches in the human brain. And if you fall into these ways of thinking, if you fall into these false perspectives and you see your life through that perspective, you will behave in ways that don't do you any service, that are dysfunctional, that don't make sense. They only make sense if you're looking at things wrongly. And so this list of glitches in cognitive behavioral therapy is often referred to as cognitive distortions. So again, just the word cognitive for everybody, it sounds exciting. It's just thinks. All it is the thinks. So cognitive behavioral therapy is thinks turn into do's. Cognitions, thinks turn into do's, behaviors. And so it says, hey, before you have a do, you have a think. And so let's take a look at the thinks. And so there's this list of cognitive distortions, flawed, wrong, inaccurate perspectives on reality. Now, there's now lots of lists of these, but what Nick and I have done is we've compiled the list of the most popular ones that actually come from Dr. Beck's work and tend to be the list that we'll generally use in therapy in different circles, depending upon what we're working on. This list that we're going to roll out for you today has a lot to do with how you see yourself and how you see other people and how you interpret things. So here's what we're going to do at home. If you're playing Jim's Neurotic Bingo, which you've seen in the show before, we're going to change that to your Neurotic Bingo. So here's what I want you to do. If you're able to get out your phone or a piece of paper, as we go through these, if there's any of them that you catch yourself doing, I want you to write that one down. If you don't have the ability to write them down, you could just do a tally, okay? And you could just tally mark when you catch yourself how many of these things you do. I've never met anybody that does all of them. I've also never met anybody that does none of them. We all do some of them. Nick does some. I do some. Jacob does some.
I'm pretty sure I've done all of these.
I've found a way to do them all.
Yeah.
So you'll hear us chime up, whenever there's one that we relate to, that we've done too. But as we're going through the list, I want you to take note of the ones you do. And while there is a process in cognitive behavioral therapy for punching through these mirages, just knowing that you're doing them is really half the battle. And so today we're not going to so much address the other side of cognitive behavioral therapy, the questions that we ask to defeat these illusions, but we're going to identify them. We're going to practice noticing them. And hopefully that's really helpful. This is a really important technique that not all, but a lot of therapists are going to do, especially if they practice from a CBT approach. So, Mr. Tangeman, as we approach the list, why don't you just shoot us off here in the right direction?
Okay, first one is all or nothing thinking. So you see things in black and white categories. If your performance falls short or short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure.
Right.
I must be all this way or all this way. So if I'm not a starter on the team, then I'm terrible.
Second place is the first loser.
Right. Exactly.
Like I didn't win, so I lost, or I didn't do it perfectly, so I'm nobody. And guys, that's not true. The world's not black and white.
Right.
The world has all the shades of gray. It's just not true.
So I should back up for a second, because one thing I think would be important, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time doing this, but just to kind of understand why we do some of this.
Right.
And what's really going on is what we're doing is we're protecting a belief system.
Right.
We've created a belief system about the way the world is or the way that we are as a person. And what happens is if we don't see it as a belief system, we see it as reality.
Right.
So therefore, all the information has to fit with this belief system, right?
Yes.
But what happens is we get information that doesn't fit.
Yes.
So I either have to change my belief system or I have to distort the information in order to maintain the belief system.
Right.
So this is basically our way of distorting things that we perceive in order to maintain our belief system the way the world is.
And we don't know we're doing it.
Exactly.
It's involuntary.
It's all kind of subconscious.
And that's why it's so important for a therapist to get this to be something you start noticing.
Right.
To notice you're wearing those glasses.
Because if I can identify distorted thoughts that I'm having, then that's an indication that, there's a belief system that I'm trying to maintain, even though the evidence doesn't support it.
You can follow the thread.
Exactly.
And you can hopefully get the glasses off and see the world the way it really is.
Like diagnosing the common cold. We can't see the virus, we see the symptoms. So distorted thoughts are the symptoms of a faulty belief system.
Exactly. Perfect metaphor. So all or nothing thinking is really common. It's whenever you see things in black and white. It's whenever you tell yourself that, either it's perfect or it's terrible. It's that perfectionism. But it's not just perfectionism, guys. It's when we beat ourselves up. Nobody will ever love me. I'm unlovable, I'm unvaluable. Hold on. That's not the case. It's not nobody ever's, right? It's not all or nothing. It's not either the world adores me or the world rejects me. You have some followers on Twitter, it's not 8 billion.
Right.
Okay? But there's some that like you, and so that's very important to notice. Another cognitive distortion that's on our list is something called overgeneralization. So overgeneralization is whenever you take a couple of bad moments, a couple of bad instances, and you tend to turn that into a never-ending pattern of defeat. And so, you don't win a couple of times, or you have a couple of bad days, or you fail a diet or two, and then you beat yourself up and you say, I'll never get it, it's never going to work, work out. This is who I am. And it's like, hold on. It's almost always illogical and inaccurate to extrapolate from a couple of moments, a couple of failures, a couple of flaws, that you have an indefinite line forward of more and more of that. The line does not continue to go down forever. That's like taking 2 snapshots of the stock market and going, well, it's going to crash at 0. And it's like, no, man, it's like 2 bad moments. Like it goes up and down, guys. It goes up and down.
Or even transferring things from one scenario into another. So I do this all the time, where I have a bad round of golf, and in my mind, well,
I'm getting worse.
I just suck at everything.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a terrible softball player too, and I
But this is that quicksand approach where we start thinking that everything is getting worse and worse and worse. Our lives are never getting better. And guys, it's usually a false view of belief. But if you believe that, what you're capable of in that state of mind is depression, anger, anxiety, abusive substances, isolation. Again, that don't make sense unless you believe something that's not true.
Right. The next one is catastrophizing.
And if you're playing Jim's Neurotic Bingo at home, stamp it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Stamp that thing.
This is when we this is making the mountain out of the molehill, right?
Yes.
We get a small little piece of information, but we make this a much bigger deal than it really is. So
Horrible.
You often think that if something bad is going to happen, it will be the worst thing that's ever happened, right? So I can think of a million examples. I think we all kind of do this to some degree.
Yeah, it's whenever you look up in the sky and you see like the little flash of light, and you don't think meteorite, you think asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. So like this happens to me all the time. When something bad's about to happen, I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I think it's going to be the worst thing that could happen. And I still do this. Like if right now my wife texted me or just called, if I saw her name show up on the caller ID, I would not think, oh, she's calling to ask if I want milk at the grocery store. Yeah. I would think there's been a car accident. Everybody I love is dying. Yeah. And that is my first thought. That is my first thought. Yeah. And I have to check myself and go, Jim, that's catastrophizing. If you believe that,
but do you?
What are you going to have? Anxiety, right? So I have to check myself, and I've had to learn over time to identify that I'm making that thinking error and then not letting myself believe it, because if I believe it, I will have anxiety.
Yeah, I've witnessed that firsthand.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. You have seen me come into your office trembling, and you're like, dude, calm down. And I'm like, this is it, man. Calm down. Yeah. Very good. So another one on the list is mental filter. So mental filter is whenever we pick out like a single negative detail, and that's like the thing you notice, and you don't notice the rest of it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like the splotch of black ink on the wedding dress, and it's like I don't see the rest of this beautiful gown. I see the one flaw, and it's the same thing in our lives. We don't take stock of all the good in our lives, all the people that love us, all the things that we've done, all the adventures that we've had. We just notice I don't have enough money to go on a beach this month.
Right.
Or I'm struggling to make rent and I'm a failure. And it's like, that's mental filter, man.
Right. So if we tie that in then to, like, as an example, or going back to the belief systems, right? So we have maybe if I have a belief system that I'm not loved.
Right.
Right. Or no one cares about me. If that's my belief system, I look for reasons to support that belief system. So this is where that mental filter comes into play. I may have 100 pieces of evidence to the contrary, but I'm going to focus on that one.
I see the one negative, and that thing blurs my vision to everything else.
Yep.
Hypercriticalism.
Next one, disqualifying the positive. Very similar to the mental filter. So it's not that we don't see the positive things. It's that we see them and we reject them.
They don't count.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've got a student who believes themselves to just be a failure at everything they do, and then they get an A on the test. So most kids, I'd be like, all right,
maybe I'm not such a failure.
Yeah, but for this particular student, because they have that belief system, now they've got evidence that goes against the belief system.
Right.
Do I change the belief system? Well, no, they're not going to change the belief system.
Disqualify the evidence.
Right, because belief systems are difficult to change, so I just disqualify the evidence.
Yes.
It was an easy test.
Yeah.
the teacher felt sorry for me.
Right.
I'll bet everybody got an A.
They downplay it. Or
Right.
whenever we talk to you, like I see this all the time with moms. Moms seem to be going through this phenomenon called mom guilt. And so they'll constantly see things on Pinterest or whatever's going on Instagram, and they see all these amazing things that other people are showcasing, and they go, oh my God, I don't do anything for my kids. I'm not, doing cute things. I'm not doing seasonal things. I'm a terrible mom. And if I talk to them in session and I say, well, hold on, just the other day you were telling me you took your kid to Boy Scouts and, like you're going camping with him over the summer. Like, that's a really nice thing. Oh, that doesn't count. Why? Because I'm doing it with Boy Scouts. It wasn't like this thing I came up with all by myself. And it's like, no, that counts. Like, don't disqualify the positive just because it conflicts with your stuff. You're falsely understanding your reality. And if you believe that lie, it will change the way that you see yourself. It'll change the things that you can do in your life. Very, very powerful. Another one here is mind reading. So mind reading is one I tease people all the time about. It's whenever we conclude that we know what another person's thinking about us, and we don't necessarily go ask them, but we totally think we got that. Yeah. And so and I tease people all the time because I'm like, listen, if you can mind read, we should be playing poker right now at the Bellagio, rolling in dough. But if you can't, then you need to admit that you really don't know what other people think, and you've got to be really careful how you live your life based on those assumptions.
And one thing that I always question people about on this one is whenever they say something, if you start off a sentence with, you think blank, you're already performing this one.
Mind reading.
Right.
You don't know what
unless they have actually told you, this is what I think.
Yeah.
Everything that follows
they wrote
that
a manifesto. Otherwise, you have to say, well, the other day you did this action, and I interpreted that to mean this.
Right.
But, you got to be an FBI agent on this, because ascribing motive is one of the hardest things you do in criminal attorney work. And so, but we all do this all the time, as if we know.
Yeah, and we're going to actually get into that in more detail next week, because we're going to actually cover 10 tips for effective communication.
Yes.
And that's going to be one that comes up.
That one's huge.
Another one, this is probably one of my favorites, is fortune telling.
Oh, God.
I see this a lot. Yep. And this essentially is when we get 2 data points, but then we can predict what the 500th data point is going to be.
Yeah.
So I see this this one thing happens, therefore, this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I text my girlfriend, 2 hours go by, she hasn't responded. She's cheating on me.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or this is what's going on.
Another way I've seen this play out is I already know what's going to happen, so why try?
Yes.
All the time.
I'm going to fail this test, so
why
what's
try?
the point of studying for it?
You know what? Therapy won't work. They won't be able to fix my depression. Why try? Rehab won't work. I've already tried to go. I've gone to AA before. It didn't work. So why try? And it's like, listen, man, that is a logical fallacy. That is a glitch in the human brain. And if you believe that false perspective, it will change your outcomes in life. You don't have the ability to tell the future. And if you do, we should be hanging out at a 7-Eleven right now buying lotto tickets like they're freaking free, because you're the key. You have the ability. But if you are not currently doing that, then you have to confess right now you do not have the ability to tell the future. Right. Because of that limitation, you should not be fortune telling about what your life and others' lives are going to be.
Right.
Another trick here is the magnification or minimization. So another way to think about this one is the binoculars, right? You pull out a pair of binoculars, you look at them the normal way. It makes something that's small and far away seem big and up close. So let's say there's a bear out there on a hill. You pull out the binoculars, you look through the lens the correct way. Well, that bear looks like he's right in front of you. And if you didn't know that you were wearing binoculars at the time, your body is going to have a visceral reaction believing that you're in danger, right? But it's not technically true. It's a perspective that's being assisted by the binoculars. The same trick happens in reverse. You take the binoculars, you flip them over. Now something that's right up next to you seems distant, small, and far away. So magnification and minimization, or what we call the binocular trick, is whenever you're blowing up scary things, right? Magnifying failures, frustrations, anything that's bad, and you're minimizing or shrinking positive things. So you're taking the scary things and bringing them right up next to your face, and taking the good, nourishing things and pushing them far away. And because of that distorted perspectives, you're out of proportion with reality.
You can even minimize negative things.
You could, and you could be in denial.
As an addictions counselor, this is probably the most common thing that I run into.
But it's a distortion. It's not accurate.
When I got my DUI, I guess I had a couple beers.
That cop was pulling everybody over on that sidewalk.
When in reality I had 15.
Right.
Yeah,
They're profiling.
I drink once a week, when in reality I'm drinking on a daily basis.
Right. They're minimizing it.
Right.
But it's inaccurate, and if you're believing inaccurate things, it will cause bad things to happen in your life.
The next one we have talked about multiple times on the show,
yeah.
but we express it a little bit differently, but this is called emotional reasoning.
Yes.
And you've heard us say feelings are not facts.
Yes.
And this is kind of where this comes into play. So this idea that you assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are.
I feel unattractive. I must be unattractive. I feel lonely. I must be not loved by others. I feel angry. There must be something to be angry about. But feelings are not facts. That is the worst possible way to deduce your reality, is based on a feeling inside of yourself. And by the way, this also applies to other things like addictions, or even like food addiction. I feel hungry. I must be needing food. No. Don't trust that. Right? That's your body and your mind playing tricks on you. So cognitive distortions show up all over the place. But another really good one here is should statements. And Nick has a great saying that I've actually stolen and I use in therapy, which is shoulding all over yourself.
Yep.
You're shoulding all over yourself. So should statements are, should, shouldn't, must, ought. It's whenever you kind of make these arbitrary, like rhetorical claims, like you should have done this, or a good man should be this, or shouldn't feel pain, or, I'm a mom, I should be doing all these things for my kids. And it's like, according to who?
Well, and I'm guessing you see this a lot in couples therapy too.
Yes.
Well, he should know this.
Yeah.
He should know that this means that.
Right. Well, you know what? You shouldn't be liking people's pictures on Instagram. Why not? Because you're with me and you should know better. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. But if you believe that false perspective, it will change the outcomes in your life.
Right. The next one, labeling and mislabeling. So instead of describing your error, you attach a negative label to yourself. When someone else's behavior rubs you the wrong way, you attach a negative label to them.
Yeah, you don't deal with what they're actually doing. So in couples therapy, God, I can't tell you how many times this happens. I sit down and it's like, he's a pathological liar. And I'm always like, wow.
Okay.
Tell me about your diagnosis. That's impressive. Like, wow.
Right. And so that is a big
once
issue.
A cheater, always a cheater. And
right.
It's like, listen, that's a rhetorical flourish. That's a label. You're putting a sticker on that human. Humans are complex. They are a galaxy of motivations and moments and ideas.
Also not very helpful, because you're not actually getting to anything useful.
Right.
You're
not doing anything.
You're putting it in a box and pushing it off to the side, as opposed to opening the box and, well, what's going on that's leading you to that label?
Right. Or I'm a loser. Right. I'm a loser. I'm unlovable. I'm ugly. I'm fat. And it's like, hold on. You're not one thing. You couldn't even be one thing if you tried. Right. Like, you're not. Humans are a galaxy of contradictions, okay? We are way too complex in our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions. We are not consistent. If there's one thing humans are not, it is consistent. And so labels are just wrong. And we also do it to other people, too. We just label other people so that we can dismiss them. And it's funny, because this is actually a really good political strategy. Just say, that person's a socialist. Right. Now I don't have to talk about any of their ideas. I don't have to talk about what the state of our society is. That's it. That person's just a right-wing conservative. Okay, so now we don't have to talk about any of their political platforms or what they think about tax law. Right. We don't have to go into the nuances of anything if we just use a label. So again, it's a false view of reality. And then the last one that we have here is personalization. So personalizing is when you find yourself apologizing for the rain. It's whenever you feel directly responsible. Somebody else is upset, somebody else is let down, somebody else is disappointed, somebody else has been defeated, and there's this weird sensation inside of you like you've got to fix it. Like almost like you need to apologize for it. Like you've got to make it right, and you feel unsettled, and you can't feel like natural again because you feel like you own that failure of another person or the circumstances which are outside of your control.
And we've talked about this before on the podcast.
I'm bad about that one.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Jacob, you do this?
I do it, but I do it from a different angle. I do it, I feel like I should have anticipated it. Sorry that I didn't
I should have protected you from shooting yourself in the leg.
I'm not that bad. But yeah, I'm pretty bad. So, like you said the rain. Like I'll be like, oh, I should have. Like I should have looked and I should have known that the rain was coming today. Yeah.
I feel terrible.
I could have taken care of that.
So then, if we really want to go down this rabbit hole, Because then the distorted thought tells us that there is a belief system that you're protecting.
Don't you start shrinking, Jacob.
Oh, no.
You leave him alone. You knock it off, you quack.
But this is actually a really good example of, for any of you...
I chimed in. I did it myself.
He didn't know what he was getting into. Oh, no.
But this is a good example for the listeners. Like, so when we identify this, then the next thing that we need to look at is, okay, so when I do this, what is the belief system that I am protecting? So reality is not jiving with my belief system. So therefore, I'm finding the need to distort the information so that I can continue to believe blank about myself.
I'll change a couple of those words to make it more palatable.
Okay.
It's not that he's protecting a view inside of himself. It's a natural thing. It's that I have a belief that I don't challenge, and so now you see the way I think about the world lining up with my belief.
Right.
And a belief in this case, if you're personalizing, is probably that I am responsible. Were you the firstborn child?
I was.
See how I did that?
I actually
a good guess.
Are we doing that?
Yeah.
We're doing
that was a good guess.
Adler.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Good guess. Good guess, my ass.
Also, my
doctorate.
entire personal life is public.
Yeah.
Like I looked into it. I don't know what your Wikipedia thing is.
No, I think you're both wrong in regards to me, though.
As a general rule, we always are.
I think with me, it is pure narcissism.
Okay.
No, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
I think that I have the ability to take care of those things, and so when I don't, that is a failure.
But that goes back to all or nothing and like perfectionism. Like, if there's an error, it's my error. I should have fixed it. I should have anticipated that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's a powerful thing. Which again, are all things worth getting rid of? No. Is it accurate or not? If you were up at night, really struggling with yourself, like, God, why did I let that happen, man? I suck at my life. I suck at my career. It's like, okay, then obviously now it's dysfunctional. Right. That's not accurate.
I mean, and the realistic view of it is I am good at foreseeing problems, and I'm good at fixing those problems.
Right.
And so when one slips through and I don't do it,
it's
not the end of my world,
right?
But it is. I do look at it and go like, I could have.
You hold yourself more accountable than another guy.
And I think that's probably part of it. Not just the. I don't necessarily think it's complete narcissism so much. I think it's actually that is your view of yourself, and that's something that you're very proud of. You're very proud of being competent and being good at what you do and being able to foresee problems.
Right.
So then when something happens, then now you have what's called cognitive dissonance. So you've got something that
doesn't line up.
It doesn't line up. Like you kind of have this expectation that of kind of like this perfection. Like I should be able to do this.
And to that
and then
point,
now I've got information that doesn't fit.
I'll tell you that we wouldn't usually use the word narcissism in this case because a narcissist has no clue that they make mistakes. It's like they have a different kind of mental impenetrability where it can never be their fault.
Right.
It's always your fault.
Okay, yeah.
So they don't apologize for the rain. They spit in your face and say it's raining. And they believe it. Like, that's a narcissist. So you're not quite in that realm.
But one point that you did make up...
Though you are a dick. Up. I just want to put it on the record.
keep this clear.
But this is a good point, that like every one of us has some of these to some degree.
Right.
And we all have a belief system, and belief systems by themselves are not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Belief systems can be good. The problem we run into is when we don't recognize it as a belief system.
Yes.
When we see it as a reality. So the example that I always use is using Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're really little, we don't identify that as a belief system.
Right.
We identify that as reality. Yes, Santa Claus comes every, Christmas. He gives presents. He flies around the world. And it's not until we start developing this cognitive dissonance when we start getting information that doesn't match the belief system.
Then we start.
How does he get around the world in one day?
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. It takes us 2 hours to get to Grandma's house, but Santa Claus can do this in one night. Now I've got cognitive dissonance. My brain doesn't like this. It has to be settled somehow.
Yeah.
So I either then take the information and say, okay, Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Right.
But that's incredibly difficult to do because I don't see it as a belief system. I see it as a reality.
Yes.
Realities don't change. Right?
Right.
Because it's the foundation. We stack on top of that. Right. So it's much easier for me to distort information.
Yes.
And it's not until we distort so much information that finally we have to say, okay, Santa Claus can't be real. I've distorted so much that this thing can't actually exist.
Something's got to give. And so when you have, to the listener, when you have a cognitive distortion, if you catch yourself looking at your life, at the lives of others, as your universe, if you're looking at it through these flawed lenses, sometimes they can be harmless. Like in Jacob's case, he's not going to lose sleep over that.
Right.
But if it was ever taken to its extreme and he found himself like really bedeviled by it, like, God, I'm such a failure. I should have helped that person. Like, how did I let that show get out of hand? I should have anticipated it. And like, another professional comes up to him and goes, dude, you couldn't have possibly controlled for that.
Sure.
You're not almighty here. You can't have done it. But if he believes that, he could say, guys, I'm resigning. Walk in and say, I'm sorry. I resign. Why? Because I'm not good at dude, you're one of our best. No, I'm giving up on it because obviously I've failed.
So all of this is on a continuum.
Right.
I mean, there is to some degree
self-damage. Yeah.
Right. I mean, to some degree that this probably has even helped.
Right.
Sure.
It makes you better at what you do.
Right.
Yeah, which Freud would call a positive neurosis. But yeah, so cognitive distortions, guys, police for them, look for them, catch them, and when you catch them, start walking through that and ask yourself, why do I believe that? Like, that's not accurate, and start touching those glasses, because that's how you start pulling them off, is looking for the evidence of the thing. Where's the truth? Because feelings aren't facts.
Exactly. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we discuss mental health first aid. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Chairman of the Board, Mr. Grae Whittaker. Grae Whittaker was better known as Bing by his fans and was an American singer and actor. The first multimedia star, Grae was a leader in record sales, radio ratings, and motion picture grosses from 1931 to 1954. His early career coincided with recording innovations such as the microphone, which allowed him to develop an intimate singing style that influenced many male singers who followed him, including Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Dick Haymes, and Dean Martin. Yank magazine said that he was the person who had done the most for the morale of overseas servicemen during World War II. In 1948, American polls declared him to be the most admired man alive, ahead of then-alive Jackie Robinson and Pope Pius XII. Also in 1948, Music Digest estimated that his recordings filled more than half of the 80,000 weekly hours allocated to recorded radio music. Thank you, Grae Bing Whittaker. If you'd like to join Bing and make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's www.patreon.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is about mental health first aid. Hello, I'm a volunteer youth group leader at my church. Last fall, a family reached out to me to talk about their 13-year-old daughter who was having some struggles. She revealed to me that she had a plan to make an attempt on her life, and her parents were aware. She did not give details, and I'm not sure to what extent she tried. She also revealed to me that she had been cutting for a while. I also work in an underage drug and alcohol prevention program and work closely with specialists in our rural area. I connected her family with a mental health worker who visits our school on a weekly basis, and she immediately started seeing her once a week. Things seemed to be going well until this week. Her mom reached out to me again, so I met with this young lady after youth group. She always seems to have everything together and doesn't always like to share. I asked her why her mom thought that we should talk, and she told me that her mom was worried about her. Her mother's grandmother had just passed away, and she knew that loss and grief was hard for this girl. We talked about the losses she's experienced through her life, mostly grandparents, and how she dealt with that. She told me that she just wants to be there for her younger siblings and that her older sister has had a harder time with it. She then told me that she gets this thought in her head that maybe she's better off not being here. I asked her, when that happens, is there a similar trigger in her life? She said no, it was randomly just popping up in her head and replays over and over. I asked her, when was the last time that she had that thought? She told me she had an episode just in December. She stated that she started throwing up over and over for hours. Her sister was worried, so they told her parents and they wanted to make her go to the emergency room, but she refused. I had a hunch, and I asked if the vomiting was self-induced, and she said yes. I asked her if she took something that made her vomit, and she said yes. She also told me that her parents were aware. We talked about why she refused to go to the emergency room and what she was afraid of. She said that she's no longer seeing her therapist, and she didn't feel like it was helping anymore, and she didn't want to burden her mom with anything as her mother was already going through so much. I asked her if she currently had a suicide plan and if she was hearing those internal voices. She told me no. I told her that there were more options out there and I could use my contacts to get her some help. I also told her that I'd like to call her mom and tell her about our mutual plan. I've taken youth mental health first aid, but this is one of the first times I've really felt like I needed more information. Did I do the right thing? What else should I have told her? And what should I do differently next time? I think everyone should take mental health first aid like we take CPR, but I know that it doesn't make us all professionals. Thanks, guys.
Great question.
Great question. Really good question.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job.
Yes.
I think you asked all the right questions. I think you recognized, what is within your ability to deal with and what things you need to make a referral and try to get connections.
Yes.
The thing that I really liked is that you identified, really first aid. You can tell that you've had experience with mental health first aid because the first thing you look at is safety.
Yes.
Is this person safe? Are they a danger to themselves or others? And what do I need to do to connect them to whatever resources available so that I can make sure that they're going to be okay?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, to that point, first off, I want to talk about the phrase mental health first aid. So if you Google that and you try to find a program, it gets a little bit rabbit traily. Basically, mental health first aid is a copywritten term. It's trademarked, and it's trademarked by an Australian group that runs workshops. And so to be quote unquote certified in mental health first aid, that means that a trainer who has paid thousands and thousands of dollars to become registered with that organization is available to do an in-person workshop for you, and you get workbooks, and you spend 2 days doing a workshop. We had a few in Nevada for a while, and I knew some trainers that did that. I always found that a little bit curious because it seemed a little bit kind of protected, and I didn't know that I liked because CPR is not owned, by anybody. Anybody can teach CPR, but mental health aid was owned. So I'm going to more so speak to the general concept that every person in any workplace needs to have some basic training. How do you detect suicidality? How do you detect abuse? How do you detect danger to the individual? How do you detect self-harm, cutting, malnourishment, things like that? And when you detect one of these things, what ought you do? And how do you stay calm? How do you talk to the person? How do you gather more information? How do you make a proper referral? How do you connect them to a helper? And that's really the same thing CPR does, Nick, because CPR is addressing the danger that you see presently, what you should do as a first responder, and then how to also incorporate getting a professional helper on the scene to take it to the next level if that's needed.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. So to clarify, when I hear mental health first aid, that's what I want people to think about, is that general equivalent of what it means to kind of have that first reaction.
And this is a good example, too, of a situation where the individual has rapport with somebody.
Yes.
Right? And they've got somebody that they feel comfortable talking to.
Yes.
Where there is a therapist in the picture, but that relationship never really got established.
Right.
And that can be difficult and kind of frustrating for that individual that's trying to help this teenager. And so you do the right thing, you refer them to a therapist, you get them into therapy, but they don't have that connection. So you're still the contact person. This person has chosen you.
Yes.
They've chosen, they feel comfortable talking to you, but then you also realize, well, this isn't my thing. I'm not a therapist.
Right.
And it puts you in a really kind of awkward situation.
It does. And so 3 thoughts on that just jump out at me. So obviously I've worked in churches, right? I worked as a youth pastor for a number of years. So I knew what it meant to work with kids, but to not be a professional helper, but to be the first one who finds out, about something going on in their life because you're a trusted adult and you're there to help them grow and, you're supportive of them and stuff. And so what this writer's talking about, I totally get that. A couple of interesting little fast points. one of the most frustrating things that I've seen in teenage work, and I think that you can speak to this too, is how parents will bring you this kid when the kid is in crisis.
Yeah.
But kids fluctuate, and as soon as they have 2 good weeks back to back, we don't need no therapy no mo.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like what you've seen in their crisis is the fault line. You've seen that when they snap, this is where it's going to break.
Right.
Now, they don't have reinforcement for that. Just because there's no current stress on that fault line doesn't mean that that's not where the weakness is. And so we need to be keeping up with therapy to kind of prepare them and inoculate them from future disaster. But so many parents think, oh, kid's doing better. They don't seem to have the same problem. It's been like a good week or 2, 3 weeks. They're fine. They're not depressed anymore. No more therapy.
Yeah.
And that's the dumbest thing you could do.
Yeah. Well, it's like when people stop taking their meds when they feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel better because the meds are working.
The meds are working, stupid. Yeah, so like, especially with teenagers, if you have a teen and you're like seeing some things and you get them in therapy, I want you to mentally understand my expectation of you. If I'm just your buddy who's a therapist and you said, hey, Jim, how long should I give them in there? Like a couple of weeks, a month? Like, no. Like, I want them dedicated at least a season, right? I want 1/4 of the calendar, the next 3 months. I want you to pony up and put them in therapy week after week and keep it consistent. Don't let them tell you that it's pizza day over at Bobby's house. They don't want to go to therapy. Nope, you're going. You're going every week at that time, and we're going to do this for at least 3 months. Then we'll check in and find out how it's going.
Yeah.
I want that no matter what.
Good days in therapy are just as useful as bad days in therapy.
That's right.
Yeah, need to keep it consistent.
First point there, but another point that makes this writer unique is they're not put in a position, Nick, where they know something that the parents don't know. Mm-hmm. And so they're lucky because a lot of times that's what happens. And then we've had a writer talk to us about that before, early in the show's history, where somebody said, gosh, like, am I a mandated reporter? Like, how does this work? And our advice at the time was, yes, you are. Mm-hmm. If you have contact with children, you are a mandated reporter. And if they're self-harming or somebody's harming them, you do have to invite the parent to be a part of that conversation and let somebody know. If you're a youth worker in a program like Boy Scouts or church, you have a supervisor, you have somebody who's technically your superior, and you're supposed to bring it to them. So in this case, she did exactly the right thing. One of her questions is, did I do the right thing? I assume it's a she. But the writer did the right thing because they did contact the parent. They didn't hide that from the child. They said, hey, can we talk to your mom? Can we do this together? Mm-hmm. And that role models the right kind of approach that we want the child to learn. And it also still preserves trust because you're not doing it behind their back. And it also says, we're taking this seriously. We're not going to ignore this. You told me this. I received this. I'm grateful to have heard it. And I need to take action on this. And it's not a question. And they're going to say, oh, please don't tell me. No. You're misunderstanding. We do this together. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm glad you told me. But I'm not just going to let you continue on this path. We're going to work on it together. So absolutely you did the right thing. But I find it interesting that in this case, there was none of that tension of like, do I know something that the parents don't know? That makes it a lot harder.
Right.
It makes it really complicated really fast.
Definitely. And I mean, I think another referral to a therapist is in order, obviously. Yes. And I think one of the best things that you can do is continue to work with this teenager and reinforce the idea that, hey, it's totally understandable that you didn't get it, you didn't mesh well with this therapist, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to mesh well with any therapist.
Right.
We keep at it.
Yes.
Therapists are just like other kids in your high school where you're not going to get along with every one of them.
Right.
But we just got to keep going through until you find one that you can really relate to.
My final point on this is one tone that comes out of the writer's letter is several points where they say, hey, we should all get mental health first aid, but that doesn't make us a professional. Hey, what else could I have told her? Should I have done something differently? And I one of the things I've noticed is this. Sometimes people feel very inadequate to address the emotional or psychological distress of another human. And they feel like everything needs to be referred to a therapist. And you know that our perspective is, yeah, we absolutely want to be included in things. We think that everybody needs to have more contact with therapists. We need the world to understand that we are a valuable resource and we're here to help. However, I want to confront that feeling of inadequacy. Listener, you need to understand something. You have everything inside of you to be a good human to another human. Because of your lived experience, because of your ability to feel feels and to understand thoughts and to have your own lifetime story, you have everything you need. You come pre-equipped to be a human who understands another human, is empathic, is kind, is considerate, and can sit with them in their truth. You do not need a professional to do those things. And so you absolutely reacted right. Mm-hmm. And to anybody who ever confronts a coworker or a child or anybody in their life who seems to be in distress, don't run from them. Sometimes people really get panicky because they think they're going to cause harm.
Right.
You're not going to cause harm. Just be present, and you will be okay. And that is a healing experience all by itself.
And this goes back to the thing that I say all the time. Your fallback position is a cheerleader.
You're just a cheerleader.
Yep.
Just be rooting for them, supporting them, and be curious. Take a posture of curiosity, ask good questions, not probing questions, not like you're setting them up for an FBI sting. Just listen and let them reveal. And that catharsis all by itself is extremely healing. And make a referral, call a helper, but don't ever feel inadequate to be a part of that. And yes, if you're an employer or an organizational leader out there, or if you have any contact with your HR, or if you are an employee, insist that your organization do some kind of formal training in mental health prep. I don't necessarily recommend the mental health first aid guys. I think that they're kind of bilking everybody for a lot of money, and I don't think that's really worth it. But any therapist in your area could really be contracted to come down to your organization and lead a quick workshop on some first aid skills.
Yep, definitely. Thank you for writing in.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about breaking up with your therapist. You're listening to Pod Therapy. This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Dr. Ben Doughan, and he has sent in his commercial for Jim to read. So here you go, Jim.
Oh, wow. I get to read it? Okay, this is the first time ever seeing it. Ben's commercial. This episode of Pod Therapy is brought to you by Jim Jobin's sensitive reading voice. If you have something that you would like to have read by a silver-tongued elocutionist and would like to cover such diverse audiences as NPR, PBS, and ASMR listeners worldwide, you need Jim Jobin's sensitive reading voice. Jim's reading voice is so quiet and smooth that it will calm, entertain, and for our ASMR listeners, titillate even the most discerning audiophile as he moves through your copy with the sultry syntax of an NPR veteran. For the low, low price of Jim's friends and mom hearing this over the internet forever, you too can have Jim's voice in your ear. Thank you, Jacob. This is like a Carl Sagan soundtrack. If you have a copy you need read in a digital podcast siren, you need Jim Jobin's sensitive reading voice, and you can reach us at whatever the hell email you guys use now. I underestimated Ben. I did not think that he would be able to get me checkmated. Well done.
If you'd like to join the party and help make the show possible and tap into this special content for patrons only, go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener writes in about breaking up with your therapist. Started therapy in August and have been going weekly. My therapist is wonderful, nice, and caring. However, I don't feel like we're digging deep enough for my liking any longer, or even really ever did. I just feel like I'm talking to a good friend. I happened to meet up with a woman who happens to be a therapist for 1 hour, and I felt so enlightened and like she got me in a way that my current therapist does not. This new therapist seems to have more experience and wisdom about the issues I'm going through. I think it's time for me to move on, but I'm afraid of hurting my current therapist's feelings or burning any bridges. Any advice?
Well, first off, it's hard for me to believe this isn't about me. So, whoever you are, if
spoken like a true narcissist.
If you're,
see, Jacob, that's narcissism.
That's narcissism. Masterclass. No, it's funny. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking, oh God, I hope this wasn't one of my patients. So anyway, I have this therapist who shall remain nameless, but his initials are JJ, and he's an idiot.
So what you do is you write into their podcast.
So how do you break up with them? You write into their podcast. No, but so this was a good one for me to read because I think I've had mixed feelings about this. Listeners of the show have heard us say that as therapists, we are very comfortable with you saying, hey, could you refer me to another professional? For some reasons, I don't think we're necessarily clicking, or I want to try different approaches. That's a very kind way for us to receive that. Do we take it personally? I want to believe that we're professional enough not to, but everybody, feels like, well, why do you want to see, am I not doing a good job? So we might be sensitive. I will challenge some of this, though. So, yes, you can go find another therapist. Yes, there's a way to do that. I think that the easiest and most direct way is to email them or call them and just say, hey, I just want to discontinue my future appointments for now. I'm going to circle back to you at some time later, but I think I'm going to try some other things for now. you can leave it that vague.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to talk to them face to face. You don't have to schedule an appointment and pay the money to tell them you're breaking up with them. They may ask for a conclusion session with you, which is pretty normal. If they ask for that, I think you should take it. I think you should do that because it's good because they're sensing that they might need to wrap you up a little bit. And that's okay to do. But as a therapist, I want to kind of be defensive for a second because this sometimes frustrates me because, like, I'll be talking to somebody and they'll be like, listen, I want you to lay into me. I want you to, like, pull me aside and don't give me give me a hard time and, like, take it deep and, like, let's go. And sometimes it's like, okay, I've had a situation where I know I can't do that. You're saying that's what you want. You want to be challenged, that you want, like, some deep philosophical existential thing. But sometimes that's not what we're here to talk about. Like, if you have a drinking problem and you come in and go, I have a drinking problem, but I want you to, like, I want to get it. I want to go down to my childhood. I want to reach down to the laces and untie this thing. And then I'm not doing that. And you're like, Jim, I just really thought you were going to do that. Yeah, I'll bet you did. But I'm dealing with the fact that you can't stop drinking right now. Like, I have a surface level thing that I have to address. And if I start talking about your childhood too much, I'm giving in to your distraction and letting you get off the scent of the thing that really matters. So in the defense of the profession, sometimes we're not pursuing these deep existential memory questions because we feel something else is more indicated.
Right.
Now, again, I don't know what their case is.
Sure.
But
and
that's one thought.
I kind of had that thought too.
Yeah.
I had that thought, maybe this would be a good thing for your therapist to hear.
Yeah.
Your therapist could use this feedback because A, maybe there's a reason why, or B, maybe they're not aware that they're doing it and this could help them with other patients that they're working with.
Yeah.
I had another thought.
Okay.
My other thought was, how did you meet this other therapist and what were the circumstances behind that meeting?
That was a little odd.
Because
I bumped into a therapist for an hour. I really liked them. They seemed to get me.
Right.
Sounds like you met them at a bar.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. And that this is somebody
This
that
other therapist is a gentle lover.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that this is the case.
Hair like an angel.
I'm not saying that this is the case, but that was immediately where my mind went to is maybe there's some attraction here. And be careful to not go into therapy because of your attraction to the person, because that's going to be very ineffective.
Yes.
It's not going to be very helpful. It could be very detrimental.
And another point here too, and this is something that maybe I suspect, Nick, that you will feel what I'm feeling on this one. As therapists, we wear different hats, depending on the person we're talking to. Whenever we go speak to psychology students or we're teaching a workshop, we're an educator. When we're on a podcast, we're an educator. So people might think, you know what, I really want to work with Jim because Jim's a straight shooter and he'll tell you what's up and he's very smart and he quotes articles. I do not do that in therapy. That is not therapy. That is education. So I am much more direct on a podcast or at a bar. If you come to me and go, so anyway, no, I'm sitting here like, half a pint into, whatever I'm drinking, then I'll start mouthing off and telling you everything I think I know. But if you show up in my office on a Monday morning and I'm there to attend to you as your therapist, I'm not in any way going to be that same kind of guy.
Right.
Because that's not effective. That's me talking and you listening. I don't want that.
Yeah. So with this, you may have hit it off very well with this individual, but you get them into therapy and it may be a completely different situation.
Could be. So the bottom line is,
about.
If you feel that it's not working out with your therapist, I'm going to challenge you a little bit to consider all these things that we've brought up. But at the end of the day, if you don't think it's working, then that itself is an obstacle. And so you would need to go ahead and consider alternatives. We've given you some ideas of how you can break up, sending an email, a quick phone call, just leave a message. Hey, discontinue my future appointments. I think I'm going to try some other options and I'll come back to you at a later date if I need to. We get that. It's very normal. Some people will ask for a follow-up. That's okay. But yeah, definitely try things. And I like that you're not discontinuing therapy. Mm-hmm. I like that you're prepared to try therapy by another means. And we've told everybody that. We don't want anybody to feel like they have to find the right therapist on the first try because it will stop you from ever giving it a shot. So my reaction to this letter then is, okay, here's how you do it. It's very easy. We're very used to it. And pursue that other alternative. If you believe that there's power to that new therapist, then go ahead and pursue that because your belief in that power is going to open up a lot more doors than your reluctance with the other one. Right. So that is the right path for you. Yeah. You should walk through it.
Yeah.
Unless you're my patient, in which case don't do it. Don't leave me, baby. Hold on. Jim can make it right.
And again,
come on back.
I think just be real honest with yourself. Your motivations are pure, that this is about therapy. This isn't about something else. This isn't that this is in your best interest, not in any other context other than therapy.
If you're cheating on me with another therapist because they're prettier than me, then I deserve to know. Okay, how dare you? So we're at the end of the show. We are recording this one a little bit from the past, so we don't have any apologies. And it's also difficult for us to necessarily name any new Patreons. So if you have patroned the show in the last few weeks and we are not naming you today, just know that we will be naming you in the next episode. But this is actually our first episode of the month, and so we definitely want to acknowledge everybody that we know about. But before we do, a couple of quick announcements. Again, get those Valentine's Day letters in because Therapy Thursday will fall on February 14th. We want to dedicate the show to love and relationships. So if you have a love or relationships question, send those in. Again, you can drop them anonymously at www.podtherapy.net, or you can email us, podtherapyguys@gmail.com. And remember that Valentine's Day is a high-risk day for suicide, so make sure you're loving on people. Make sure you're being kind to people. A couple of other quick announcements. The Pod Therapy Pinewood Derby is up on our Patreon. If you're a Patreon, you can check it out and submit your car and talk to us about that so we know it's coming. And then in May, we're going to launch a Kickstarter. And so if you're one of our Patreons, help us conspire to come up with a Mental Health Awareness Month campaign to remember so we can make it a big deal and hopefully take this project to the next level. But we definitely want to thank all of our Patreons. Every month, at the beginning of the month, we thank all of our THERAPODs. So we want to say thank you to our dapper, three-toed reptilian special forces of our Therapeutic Alliance. Thank you, Brooks Lyle, Blaine Maurer, Brad Kefauver, Brian Lehman, Corey Owens, Curtis Hanlon, Dan Martin, David Pollock, David Younce, Easy Whip, Gavin Bristow, there's Psychotic Scoop Krells, Ice Blue Scoop, who's leading the pack at $10. Doesn't it sound like a Carl Sagan, like Mysterious Universe kind of soundtrack? Is that what it's titled?
No, it sounds like
Is it titled generic Carl Sagan explains something deep?
Zen.
It sounds like you're staring into Saturn's
thing.
Rings.
It's titled Nature 3.
That's exactly it. I nailed it.
It's good.
The rings of Saturn are ice crystals, as each of us is an ice crystal in orbit around our higher power. Katie Terhard, Nick's sister, Kate Keller, Lori Sorry Fella She's Married, Eltsroth, Leon Kassab, Linda Brandmeier, Mandy Abaila, Manuela Musaku, Malaya, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Peter Van Pelt, Robert Paulson at $4.99, nice try Robert, John, his Twitter's on fire B, Scoopaholic, Scoopstronaut, Curtis Hanlon again because I forgot he's already on there, Ellie O'Dare, Betsy Joseph Pangrazio, Tracy Replogle, a.k.a. Jim's mom, and Carrie Terhark again, Nick's sister, because I forgot she's already on there.
Yeah, and you spelled it right one time and got it wrong the next. And we want to especially thank our bosses, the Elite 8 Mysterious and Shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr., Mint, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop, Violon, Judy Schneider, Grae Whittaker, Chairman of the Board, and Dr. Ben Don.
Dr. Ben is great at writing commercials, Don. If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy things like our book club and discussion groups, you can go to patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. Thank you to our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided in your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and on patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit your own questions to the show? Ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Carl Sagan.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.